Hi there and welcome to Routing in Vue 3. My name is Brugane and I will be guiding you through everything you need to know about adding navigation and routing in your Vue 3 application. Vue Router is the official routing library for Vue and it is an essential tool if you want to build real-world application that span multiple pages or view. We will start from ground zero and we will create a project without Vue Router and then we will manually add Vue Router. We will create multiple components and create router in the view and then we will see routing in action. We will have header footer component and then we will also see how we can configure routes with dynamic values, pass multiple properties in the URL, how dynamic route binding work, what are named routes, what is redirect URL, and how we can add a not found page, and much more. We will also explore navigation guard and see how we can protect access or pages from unauthenticated user. This course is hands-on. You will be building as you learn with real examples that help you understand on how routing works. Whether you are getting started with Vue 3 or you are moving from Vue 2, this will help you to build applications that are scalable, dynamic, and easy to navigate. Let me continue with routing in the next video, but before that, if you are new to the channel, make sure that you subscribe to the channel. That way you are always notified of the new videos that I release. But with that, let me continue from the next video. We want to create a new project. Let me open Visual Studio here and I will select folder here. That will be Vue Router here. Let me select that here and inside there we want to create a project. I will open terminal here. Let me create project here. We will use the command npm create view at latest. Project name, let me call that Routopedia. Package name will be the same. TypeScript, I do not want that. No JSX support. I will select no for Vue Router because I want to show you how we can add that package and Vue Router and how we can configure everything from scratch. We will select no, no for Pinia, we test no, and no ESLint. Perfect. So everything will be no here. Now we have to navigate to Routopedia and then we will say npm install. Once the package are installed, we will run the command npm run dev and that should bring up the web page here. And perfect, our application is running. Now in the current project, what I want to do is start from ground zero. Let me delete all the components and I will delete all the assets here. Where we have the app.vue here, I will delete everything and in the template I will keep it simple. Hello world here. Remove all the style. Perfect. In the main.js here we do not have CSS. Remove that and perfect. If I go back to the application, we have the hello world. That is looking perfect. With that, we have a basic empty template here and we will start from ground zero. Now we want to add routing in our project and for that we will go to the official website for Vue Router, that is router.vuejs.org here, and there we are currently on version 4. If I click on get started here, you can see we have the npm install for Vue Router. Let me copy the command here and we will navigate back here. We will have to exit out of the terminal window. I will press Ctrl C for that and then I will run the command npm install Vue Router at 4. Perfect, that is done here. And if you see I have checked in the project here, I have to change. What happens is in package.json, it adds the Vue Router here and the current version is 4.5 and it has been installed. With that configured here, I will do npm run dev again. I want the web server back up and running. And if I refresh here, and perfect, that looks good. I also want to install the Bootstrap. Version is version 5 here. We will scroll down. I will copy the link here and I will add that in index.html. Perfect, that looks good. With that configured here, let me continue from the next video. Now when we are working on a project where we have to configure router or routes in an application, we need to create few components because those components will basically be different pages in our application. All of the components will be inside the components folder. So in the src folder, I will create a new folder, name it components, and there I will create few folders. I will create a folder home here, and then in components I will add one more folder that will be product, and let me create one more that will be layout. Inside layout here we will have a new file. We will have header.view component. Next we can create footer.view component, and in the home we will create home page dot view component, and let me create one more that will be contact us, so contact.view. Inside product folder, let me create a component for product list where we will display all the product, and then I will create a product detail.view component. I believe all of these components are looking good here. Let me create a template. I will have a div with product detail. In our product list here, let me add a div, and we will have a dummy list of products. Then we have contact. Let me add a div, and I will say contact information. Just some dummy text. That way we have something in each component. We will say template, and in the div, we will have home page. Save that. We will add a template, call that as footer, copy that for header, and then we have index. Perfect, everything looks good. Let me close all of that. If I save that and go back, we have the hello world and we do not have any console. Perfect. So we have added multiple pages or components in our application. We have configured or added the package for Vue Router, but routing is not functional. We have not done anything in our project. We have the base setting that is done here. Let me continue in the next video. Now that we have different components here, we need to add a router in the application, and we need to add a file that will manage all the routes. We will add that file in the src folder. Let me create a new folder. I will call that router, and inside there we will add our main routing file. I will call that routes.js, but you can name it anything you want. Even the folder name here, you can call it anything else if you like. I like to keep it consistent with router and routes.js. Inside there, we need to create router. Now, if you remember in app.vue, well, in main.js, we have create app where we import that from Vue. Similarly, we will have to import create router. That will be from Vue Router. Now, when we have to implement routing, there are multiple routes that we can use. We have create memory history, we have create router matcher, we have create web hash history, and we have create web history. Web hash history is basically when you examine a URL, sometimes you might have URL with hashes in them, and that will differentiate each component. But a more familiar or friendly approach that everyone is used to is having / in the URL, and that will be done using create web history. So we will select that here, and then we will create a constant. I will call that router is equal to, we will call create router here, and in the curly brackets here, we will add configuration. First we need to configure is what will be the type of router that we want here. We will define that using history, and that will be create web history. Then we need to define all the routes in our application, and that will be an array of object. Once we do that, we will define that array later on, but at the end here we will have to export that router. That way it can be accessed outside if we want that. With that we have configured routes.js. Now we need to configure our application to use the router. For that what I will do is rather than having everything clustered here, I will say constant app is equal to create app. And then we will say app.mount. Now before I mount that, I will basically import the router that we have created here, and I will add that on the app. We will import that from the file that we created in router. We have routes.js, and with that import statement, we want to mount that router on our application, and for that we will say app.use, and there we have to pass router. With that, now our app has been configured to use the router object that we created inside routes.js. Now the router that we have added here does not have any routes, so nothing in the application feels different, but if you do F12, we have a warning from Vue Router that there was no match found for the location of path / because we are on the home page. So it does display a warning that tells you that Vue Router has been configured in the application, but how do we actually add routes and bind everything together? Let me do that in the next video. Now we have few components here that we have created in each of the folder, and we want to configure routes for those components. And again, all the routes will be configured inside the routes.js. We have the array of routes. When we have to configure the routes here, in the object that we have here, we will define two things. Well, we will define more, but we will start with two. First one is the path here, and that will be just / because we want to add route for our home page. So if there is only /, then what is the component that we should display? The component that we want to display here is the home page, so we will have to import that component. I will import home page here, and once you import that, we can directly assign it like this. The location here must be valid based on your folder structure, and once that is valid, this will work. Now that is for the home page. Let me copy and paste that again. Another route that I want to configure here will be for contact, and the component we will have to import that as well. That will be contact. Let me do that. With that, we have configured two routes in the application. If I save that here and if I go back, press F12 here, you can see the warning here goes away. Let me finish the update here. And then where we have the path here, let me modify that and I will write contact. If I press contact, you will notice nothing happens. Even though we have configured routes here, why is it that even if we have the route here, it is not being displayed? Because we are missing one critical thing. Now when we are saying that this component needs to be displayed or contact component needs to be displayed, where will we display that? We need to define that in our app.view. Let's say if after hello world we define that, and in order to define that we have a special tag for that, that is router view. Once you save that here, you can see in the UI we are suddenly seeing contact information. The reason is because we are on the contact page. If I remove that contact and press enter, now I see the home page. But can you notice something odd here? Even if we are loading the pages, hello world here always stays there. So what happens is whatever routes you have defined here and whatever component needs to be displayed, they will be displayed inside the router view. If you have something before or after that, that will be displayed on all the pages. So that basically means if you want to add a header or footer for your website, That needs to be displayed in all the places. Technically, you should add that before and after the router view. That way in router view, it will toggle everything between those two, but header and footer will stay constant. We will work on that in a while, but right now you can see using router view here and our routes that we configured, we can see the routing in action. If I navigate to contact here, perfect, we have contact information and we do not have any console warnings. This is a great start. If you created a project using Vue Router, when we selected the Vite option and it asked for Vue Router, you will have something similar to routes.js, but by default it is inside a file called as index.js. But in that file, most of the configuration will be same, but there will be one thing that will be different. Inside the create web history here, there will be something called as import.meta.env.base_URL, and that is needed because we are creating our application using Vite. You can think of that as a configuration that is needed for router and make sure to add that import here. But with that, everything else that you see will be similar to what you would have if you created a project using Vue Router as yes when we were creating the project using Vite. So make sure to add that configuration before we proceed in the next video. If you remember in app.view where we added the router view, we can add header before that, and after that we can add footer. So let me go to getbootstrap.com, and there if we search for navbar and scroll down, we have that here. Let me copy that and I will add it right here. Perfect. If I save that here, great. You can see we have navbar, but the click here is not working, and I believe if I go here, I forgot to add the CDN for JavaScript. Let me add that in index here. I save that. Perfect, this is working. With that, we have added header in our application, but let me configure it based on our routes here. If I go back, this dropdown, let me call that as product, and we will have product list here, and let me add product detail. Perfect, looks good. We have the home page here. Next, I want to add a contact us. Then the li here, well, let me cut the anchor tag here, and I will paste that in the form here, and I will call that login, remove the disabled for now, and remove the li. I believe that looks good. If I expand that, perfect, we have login here, we have product, contact us, and home. But if you click on them, nothing happens. We need to make sure that this is functional, and let me do that from the next video. Our navigation is working here, but what I will do is let me cut the nav here, and we will move that in its own component that we created. That is the header component. I will add that here, and then I will have to import that component. Let me add script here. We will have setup, and we want to import header here. Add the header. Let me add the closing tag here. We need that component, and perfect. Now what I want to work on is when I click on contact us, it should take me to that particular URL. When I click home, it should take me to the home URL. We will work on the header component here, and we have home. Now when you are working with Vue Router, we will not be using anchor tag. We will be using something called as router-link. I will add the closing tag here, and with that we have a router link here, but you can see we have an error right here. That is because when we are using router link, we do not have href. That is basically replaced with something called as a 2. We need to define the route where it will redirect using to here, and home page will go to the forward slash, and if I save that, the error goes away. Let me save that here, and let me create another router link here. Add that. We will have two, and what will be the route? If I go to routes here, the contact route, I will copy that, and let me add that here, and save that. With that, if I refresh the application, now if I click on home, you can see that is working. If I click on contact us, you can see that navigation is functional. If you examine the URL here, you will notice that is also getting updated here, and that looks great. If I examine the components that I have product detail and product list. For those components, I want to register routes as well. Let me do a simple one here, that is the product list here. Let me add that, and let me import that component. I will also import the product detail here, and where we have the product list here, we will add that, and let me save that. In the header, let me modify that. Product list, it will be 2. And what is the URL? If I copy that here, paste that, and this will be a router link here. Copy that, and I will also paste that for product detail, but I will come back to product detail in just a minute. Perfect. We will have to modify this to be a 2. Great. Now with that, if I go to product list, that is working. Now in a real world application, what will happen is product 1 will take us to product detail here, and that will display details about that product. So basically we need to link ID, and we have to pass that in the parameter. We need to think about how we will register a route that will accept an ID, like a product ID in this case. Well, we can do that as well. We will say path here, and we can say it will go to product slash, well, let me add the forward slash here, and then after the forward slash, we want a dynamic property, so we will write colon and then ID. That ID will be dynamic on whatever we have in the URL that will be populated here, or to be explicit, you can call that product ID. What component needs to be displayed? That will be product detail. With that, we need to configure product detail so that it will accept product ID as a parameter. Let me open that here. We have product detail, and we need to accept the route parameter with the name of product ID. We will configure that in the script here. Let me do that. And here we will have to import something called as useRoute from Vue Router. Once we import that, then we need to create an instance of that, and let me assign that to a constant of route. Let me log the route.params here using console.log. That will have all the parameters if there are any in the URL. Let me show that. Right here after product, if I write 12 here, and if I do F12, whoops, I have a mistake here. It will be only 1. If I do product /12 here, perfect. You can see the route is capturing that parameter, and that is product ID. We can display that in the parameter here, product ID. That will be inside route.params. We have product ID. Save that, and perfect. You can see that is working. If I change this from 12 to just 2 here, that is updated. So with that, you can see how we can pass parameter in the route, and based on the parameter that we have passed, how we can capture that using route params here and display that using route.params, and then name of the parameter must match what you have defined in your routes here, that is product ID. where we have the product detail, you can see it expects a product ID. But what if where we have the product here, and if a user clicks on product detail, we will navigate them to the product detail, the same component, but if the product ID is not present, we will display no product ID. So that means we want to register same component but at two different routes. That is possible as well. If I copy and paste that here, I want to register a new route which is only product here, and that will take me to product detail. But when we go to product detail here, route.params.product.id will not be there. So I can add a div with a if condition, and I can check if route.params.product.id is present, then we will display that. Else we will display no product ID found here, and perfect. If I save that, you can see that is working because in the URL I do not have any ID. But let me navigate to home page here, and then in the header we will have to register that route. That will be product. If I save that here and if I refresh, you will notice now if I go to product detail directly, it says no product ID found. But if I add that in the URL here, 123, then we have the product ID. So with that, same component can be registered on multiple routes, and you can work around the parameters if you have that requirement. Now there is one more thing that I want to show you. Whenever you are in the header here and you have to, make sure to add a forward slash like this. That will make sure that it goes to the absolute route, else what will happen is, let me show you. Right now we are on product and product 123. If I go back here and if I click on product list here, you can see what happened. The URL here gets messed up because what happens is it will append that product list after the current URL, that is product. We do not want that. Even if you go to product detail here, you can see it appends product after the product. That is because we do not have a forward slash here. That way it will append it on the current route. So make sure to add a forward slash, and then it will replace everything with whatever you have right here. If I save that here and if I refresh here, now if I go to product detail and if I write 123 here, we have that. But now if I navigate to product list, you can see the URL is populated and it removes the product and directly adds product list after localhost, and that is perfect. Now if you have more than one parameters, you can do that as well. Let me open that here. Well, not in index. Let me close that. Where is my routes? It is right here. In the routes here where we have product ID, let's say we want another value, that is category ID, and if I save that, now what will happen is if I go to product detail here, and if I add an ID, 123, you will notice that does not work. Because now it thinks that you are expecting two parameters. Let me scroll here, that way it's more visible. Perfect. Now the route here is expecting product ID and category ID, and you have only provided one thing, that is product ID. Let me add one more value for category ID, and now that works. If I go to product detail, I can even add category ID. Let me do a if else here for that. That looks good. Let me save that. And perfect, you can see that is working. But now what if we want this category ID to be optional? We can just add a question mark there and that will work. If I remove that, now the page is loaded. We have the product ID. If I add a category ID here, that works as well. So with that, you are flexible with the parameters, and even if you have more than one parameters, you can easily achieve that. Now before I continue here, what I want is product list. This will be dynamic. If I click on product 1, it should take me to product detail and that should automatically populate product /1. Not 1, 2, 3, it should be 1. That is what it should do. Let me go to product list here and let me add a script setup here. Within here, I will create a constant for product where I will have ID and name. And then rather than UL here, let me add a div where I will add v for product in products. And I will have a closing div. For each one of them, we will display product.name. If I save that here, perfect, we have the name, but we want to add a link to all of these names. For that again, we will use router link here. Let me cut that and wrap it around the name. And we need to provide a route. So we will say to, and we need to bind that to product. And let me add a / and then the ID of the product. When we have to concatenate string with some of the properties that we have down here, we will have to bind this. And then we need to add $. Let me add that. Perfect. And then here, wherever we need to add some dynamic things, we will say $, and in the curly bracket, we will say product.id. That way we can concatenate string with some dynamic properties using our bind here, and that should work. Let me click on product 1. Perfect. If I go back, product 2 and product 3. So perfect. That is working. Now if I go back to routes here, you can see in each route we have path and a component, but we can also provide name to our routes. Like the contact here, I can provide a property that is name here, and I can call that as contact. Did not work here because I have equal to, that will be colon. What we have done here is basically this route, we have given it a unique name of contact, and when we have to access that, we can now access a route using a name as well. What I mean by that is if we go to header here, and where we have the contact us, right here, in the to, we were passing the route here, but rather than that, we can pass an object here, and we can say name is contact. We will have to bind this here. Perfect. With that, if I save that, and if I go back to contact, you can see that is working. One good thing about adding a named route is, let's say in future you come here and you're like, hey, we need to update the URL here to contact us. You do not have to update anything else because you are using name and not the route. So if you update route, everything will still work exactly the same. You do not have to worry about anything here, and that is perfect. So that is another way you can route to any of the components. You can directly use the path, or you can give it a unique name, and then you can access the name. Let me show you one more example with the named routes here. We have the product detail. Let me give that a name here, and that will be product detail. Perfect. Let me add that. You can even set the props here to be true. That way you are explicitly telling that this particular route will have properties. But now we have given this a product details here. Let me copy that, and where we have header, well, not header, product list, you can see we were using the route here, but we can clean it up using the named route that we have provided. Inside here, we will say we have a name of product details, and then we need to provide parameters. The parameters that we will provide here, that is product ID. Let me add that here, and we need to include all of this in a curly bracket. I forgot that. Perfect. With that, what happens is we have a param of product ID. If I save that, and if I navigate to product list, if I go there, we have the product ID. If you remember, we also have category ID here. So let me give that category ID, and that let me pass 77. If I save that, and if I go back to product list, perfect, that is working. Now sometimes you might have a requirement in your project, like here, let's say we renamed this from contact to contact-us in the URL. So what if we want a redirect, or if someone goes to the contact page? Like here, if I copy this, and if I navigate here, you will notice it will not work. In the view warning, it displays no match found. For that, we can add a redirect. We can say path. If someone goes to contact here, then we want to redirect them. And when we have redirect, we can use the named route here, and that is contact right here. With that, if I save that, and if someone goes to contact us, that works. But if someone navigates to contact, it automatically redirects them to contact us. Can be handy if you want to redirect someone to some other page, or you want to have two URLs for the same page. Next thing that I want to implement is the 404 not found. What if someone goes to a route that does not exist? For that, let me create two more components. In layout here, I will create a new file, and I will say not found.view. And let me create one more file here. I will call that noaccess.view. Let me create a template here, no access, you do not have access. And in not found, I will display page not found. The no access, we will use that later on. Right now we want to work on not found. Now for any route that is not registered, we want to display the not found here. For that we will add another route here. The path here will be specific. We will have to say / colon and then catch all. That will basically catch all the paths that are not in this particular routes array. And once we catch that, where do we want to go? We want to go to the component. Let me import that. Not found. And we will add that here. With that, if you save it, and now if you enter any incorrect route, you can see it will take you to the page not found. Next thing that I want to walk you through is, let's say we are on the home page of the application and we have a button. On click of that button, we want to redirect to some route, but I want to do that inside a function. Let me open home page for that, and I will work on that. In the script here, let me add the setup. Perfect. And here we will have to import use router. Then we will have to create a constant router using the use router. And let me create a function. I will call that function go to contact. And in order to navigate to that page, we have something called as router.push. And then we can write the name. Let me double check that is the correct name here. And let me add a button. I will add a click event, go to contact, and contact us. With that, if we click on the button here, perfect, it is able to navigate us, and that is working. But if you are not using named routes here, you can directly use the route as well, that is contact us here, and you can say router.push and directly push that to the route that is contact-us. If I save that here and refresh, perfect, that is functional. So it depends on how you have followed the convention. If you are using named route, you can use that. If you are using direct URL here, you can use that option as well, and both of them will work. Now let's say you want to implement a button to go back to the previous page you were on. How will you do that in Vue? Well, let me do that page inside the product list here. Let me add a button here, and there I will add a click event. In that event, we can directly access the router object that we have by using the $router sign, and there we have a method called as go. That go method expects a number here, and it depends on where you want to go. If you write -1, it will be a back button. If you write +1, it will basically be the forward button, provided there is any value there. So based on the integer, you can either go back or you can move forward. And also if you want to go 2 pages back, you can do -2 and so on. Let me show that in action. I have added back button in product list here. Now let me go to contact us, and after that if I navigate to product list here, and if I hit the back button, it should take me back to the contact page, and that works. It can be handy in some situation. It is not that much common, but if you ever need that requirement, you can easily access that using the go method on the router object. Now I want to introduce you to something called as navigation guards in Vue. As the name implies, they are guarding something, so they will act as a guardian on who can access or who cannot access a route. We can define specific rules and we will write them inside the guards here. But for that, if you remember, I have added in the header here, scroll down, I added a link for login, but I did not add that component. Let me do that. I will create a new folder for authentication, and I will create new file. I will call that login.vue. There we will create a template. Right now I will only display login there, and that should be good. Now let me register that route in the routes here. The path will be login here, and component I will have to import that. Import login, and that will be the component. We can even give that a name of login here. That way we can use name component or we can use the route. Then inside the header here, we will modify this to be a router link. Perfect. We will add the link here to, that will be login. If I save that, let me see if that is functional, and perfect, that works. Now when we talk about navigation guard, they can be global navigation guard or individual route guard. Global navigation guard we can add in routes.js. Before we export that, we have the router here. We will say router dot, and we have a method before each. Now in that method we have 3 parameters. We have to, from, and next. What to means is basically where we are going to. From means where we are coming from or where the request is coming from, what was the previous route. And next basically means that go ahead, everything is good. Whatever is the next route that is inside to, I want you to go to that route. If we add this particular logic here and we are logging to from as well as global before each, every time we change navigation, this will be invoked before the redirect happens. Let me save that and let me open the console window. And then let me navigate to contact us. You can see that is invoked here. And if you examine the route here, let me expand that. First we are logging to, so it displays that we are going to contact us, and where we are coming from, we are coming from the home page. Now if I go to product here, you will notice it says we are going to product list and we are coming from contact us. So that way it is tracking everything and we can use that for some validation. Now the next here, if you want, you can remove that because originally Vue intended to remove that, so they might remove that in future, but rather than next, you can directly return true or false. If it is true, then it will be able to navigate, but if you set that to be false, it will not route to the next URL. Let me show that. If I save this and if I make it true, you can see when I click, it navigates me. But if I make this false here, then none of the navigation in the website will work. Well, it is redirecting because I did not add a return statement before that. If I save that here, you can see nothing is loaded. Because every time it is returning false, that means it will display this global before each, and it will even display where to redirect. You can see it is contact us, but that component never loads because the before each is returning false. So this must return true, only then the navigation will work, and you can see now it is functional. If we try anything else, you can see that is working here, and perfect. That looks good. We can use the before each here to accomplish the login in our website. What I mean by that is, let's say if a user logs in successfully, then they can access all the pages. But if a user has not logged in, and if they try to access product or contact, then it should redirect them to log in. For that, what I will do is, where I have path here, let me use named routes here, and I will give that a name of home, and then we have name of login. Now before each here, let's say we have a validation to check if a user is authenticated. If not, we will redirect to the login page. So let's say you have some third-party validation, or if you have access token, you can validate that. And after that, we will have a flag that will be is authenticated. Right now, I am setting that to be true, but basically you will check the access token here and see if that is valid or not. If that is valid, then you can denote that the user is authenticated. If the user is not authenticated, then we want to check, are they trying to go to login? If not, we want to redirect them to login. In order to check that inside too, you noticed we had the route on where they want to go. Inside too here, we can check the name. If that is not login, then we will return them to login. Now we can check name here because we have given a named component, and because of that we can check that, or else you will have to check the route inside this to object. If you press F12 here, you can see in each object we have the name, or we have the href or full path. You can use any one of them. So here we are saying if the user is not authenticated and if they are not going to login, then we will redirect them to login to make sure they are authenticated. With that in place, if I save that here, and now if I try to access any of the pages here, well, you can see contact, it is able to go there because we have is authenticated as true. If the user is not authenticated and if I refresh here, they will always redirect me to login. If I click on contact us, you can see it stays on login here. If I click on home page, it stays on login. So that is working. Now we will not be implementing the actual login functionality here, but you get the idea of how you can use guard to redirect them to login or any other page if that is needed. Let's say if you want to add a condition that home page can be accessed by user even if they are not logged in here, then you can check here if to.name is equal to, and I believe it is home. Let me double check. Yep, that is correct here. So if that is home, then we can return true. And with that, a user will be able to navigate to the home page even if they are not authenticated. Let me show that here, and perfect, that is working. But if we try to go to contact us, it will redirect me back to login, and that works as expected. Now the method that we added here, this is called as global card, but we also have per route card. So the before each that we have here applies to all of the routes, but let's say there is this product list here where you want something special or you want to implement a custom logic. What we can do here is, let me give it a name of product list. That is not required, but I'm just adding that. But on top of that, we have something called as before enter here, and there we will have to and from, and we can log some things if we want. So here we can log before enter here, and let me change that before enter per route here. Perfect. With that, if you scroll down here, let me make authentication to be true here, and I will remove the logs here. Perfect. If I save that, and now if I go to home page, that is working. But if I go to product list, I will see two console logs, one from before enter per route and global before each. Let me show that. You can see it got incremented. Let me refresh and show again. If I come directly on this page, we have the global one that gets executed, and there we have before entry per route. So if you want to add the validation on each route, that is also possible. Now for the routing for product list, I want to make sure that only if a user is admin, then they can access that component. For that, I will have a constant here is admin, and I will set that to be true. And then we can add a condition, if is admin, only then we will return true here. Else we will return false here. Let me do that. So that way only if this condition is true, which we can check with some other API or access token, then they will be able to access product list. If I navigate back to the home page, right now they will be able to access. That works. But if I set that to be false, if I click on product list here, you can see nothing happens. What you can also do is move all of this logic into a separate function here. Let me add that. I will add a function is admin, paste that here, and I will create a function is authenticated. There also we will have something similar where we will have the authenticated flag and we will check whether that is true or not. This logic that we added here is somewhat similar to what we have here. So of course you will not implement both of them. It will be one of them, but I want to show you all the options. So with that, what we can do is now we have these two methods. We can invoke those methods in before enter. What you can do is right here, let me delete that, and we will add is admin and is authenticated. That way it will check both of them, and both of them are true right now, while the is admin will return false, so it should not go there. Let me try that. Yep, product list is not working. Now if I make this true here and save that, and perfect, we have the product list. We can improve this here. If you remember, we added a no access. We can use that here. If there is a route that requires admin and it is not an admin, then we can return to a component of name. Well, I will have to import that. Import no access. And then name here will be no access. I will have to add double quotes here and save that. And now let me make this false again. If I save that, well, we did not register a route for that. Let me do that here. Will be no access. Name will be no access. And we do not have a redirect here. Let me remove that. What I want is component. That will be no access. If I save that here, and of course, you can see the error message. It says no match for name, no access, because this is case sensitive. We will have to use this name here, paste that here, and now it works. So that also points another difference, that name that you provide here are case sensitive. But with that, you can see how no access works. All the other pages are working as expected. In the current project, we have everything that is working, but you can see in the home here, we have an active class. And that is an active class because of Bootstrap. If I hover there, you can see we have active class, and I have added that in header here, right here. But what should happen is if we navigate to contact here, or if we go to login, then I want that link to be active. Like right now we are on the contact us here, and if you examine contact us, Vue Router adds its own custom active class, that is router-link-active. That class will only be there on contact if you examine active. We do not have that, because right now we are on the contact component here, and that is the active class for the Vue Router. Now because we are using Bootstrap, we want to use its active class. Or even if you want to use some other active class, you can tell Vue Router that rather than using the router link active class, I want you to use some other class name for when something is active. We can do that configuration, but before that, let me remove this active class in header here. And now home does not look active. We will have to add that configuration in the routes here, where we have the array of routes. After that, we can add a link active class, and in Bootstrap the default class is active, but let's say you want to add something else here along with active. You want to make it btn primary. You can add whatever class you want. With that, if you save here, right now we are on the contact. You can see contact is getting the btn and btn primary. If I go to the full screen here, you will see that in action. If you log in, because we have some other style here, that is why it is not reflected. But here you can see the active in action. So that way, if you are using Bootstrap, or even if you want to change the default active class to some other class, you can easily do that using the configuration link active class. I hope you guys have enjoyed the video. Now if you want to build a real-world application using Firebase database authentication using Vue, I have a complete course on that on .NETmastery.com. That being said, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like the video and leave a comment, and I will see you guys in some other video.